Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is the Go-to-Market Academy. If you're new, welcome. If you're returning, we're happy to see you again. We put these sessions together to give you real, usable tools to help you launch your launch hit harder, whether you're working with a lean team or scaling up. Today, we're focusing on something that every team needs to figure out: how to turn what you're already making, those in-game captures, screenshots, raw footage, into actual launch content that looks good and drives results. And the best part is you don't need a blockbuster budget to do it. By the end, you'll have a solid game plan for trailers, key art, and social content that grabs attention and builds momentum from the jump. Speaking of jump, before we jump in, quick intro. I'm George Goitasolo. I'm a program manager at Meta on the Scaled Launch Services team. I get to work with devs and creators like you every day, helping bring games to market in a way that actually lands. My background is in brand and content strategy across tech, gaming, and entertainment, everything from scrappy indie teams to big name franchises. That's really what Go-to-Market Academy is all about: sharing the practical stuff that works, tools, tactics, real examples. We run these every month, so you'll always have an opportunity and you'll always have our support when it comes to launch. Let's get into today's topic: marketing asset creation. We've partnered with the expert team at Scout House to guide you through the process of planning, capturing, and creating the content you need for a standout launch, regardless of your team's size or budget. In this session, you'll learn how to identify the most important launch assets, capture in-game footage and screenshots that effectively convert, transform those captures into polished trailers, key art, and social content. We'll also cover smart ways to repurpose your assets and stay organized, ensuring your content works harder and reaches further. By the end of this session, you'll have a proven framework for building your own launch content kit, including store-ready key art, a compelling trailer, and shareable social assets. You'll also receive useful templates and checklists to support your next launch and beyond. We'll take questions at the end, and we'll share all the resources and guides we covered today to help you continue building after the session. Now, let's welcome our presenters from Scout Health: Jonathan Neferetti, co-founder and head of production; Zane Parker, director of gaming. Jonathan, Zane, the floor is yours.
Hey everybody, I'm Zane, director of gaming at Scout House. Our games and production teams work directly with developers and creators to get them looking in tip-top shape, whether helping to get the coolest capture or content possible or just jumping into the editor and to help things get running.
And I'm Jonathan, co-founder at Scout House. Here at Scout House, we've been a proud Meta partner since 2018 and spending the last decade working with hundreds of developers and creators like you, helping launch and promote many of the favorite apps and worlds you see in the store today. And so for today, we're going to dive into launch and marketing content production. Okay, so to kick things off, we do want to lead with, while we'll mostly be talking about asset creation in preparation for launch, everything we are covering still applies after launch. Whether you want to make a big push to update your assets months later, or you're preparing for a development update that you would like to create a marketing beat around, there's really something for everyone in this webinar today. So what are we going to cover and what does that look like? So we're going to start with why quality launch assets really matter. As developers and creators, you have an advantage over larger studios, not just in speed, but also your ability to experiment with your content production. And knowing that, we'll work backwards from launch day, mapping out when you should start planning your content production. We'll chat about creating effective key art with some useful tips and tricks. Then we'll talk about treating your next capture session like a little mini film shoot, shot lists, spectator cams, and how a 2-hour master session can get you across the finish line. We'll learn how to stretch that main capture session to fuel all your content. And we'll wrap up chatting about some ways you can iterate and test your content along the way. At the end, we'll take a short 15-minute intermission before coming back together for an office hours Q&A session. So keep in mind, we'll also be sharing any resources we mentioned throughout the session after the webinar. So look out for those.
All right, so to start, let's talk about why your launch assets are so important. You're hard at work on your app or world, but once it's finished, does it really exist if no one's ever heard of it? Now you have to figure out how to get people to see and most importantly choose you. Being an indie, you actually have a lot of great advantages, being able to be more agile, authentic, and more creative with the types of content you can produce for your community. There are some simple things that you can learn from watching how existing apps perform out in the wild, like how you should probably have a video on your landing page and how almost nobody will actually listen to any of the sound in your videos. With that, let's jump into some reasons why your launch assets are one of the most important things you work on. So why do launch assets matter? Strong assets equal visibility and conversion. You want to show them not only that your app is going to look cool, but they can also trust you as a dev to deliver something of quality. Some goals to strive towards would be like, you have 1 click to sell, make it count. In store, each key art gets about 2 seconds of eye time. Netflix measured itself at 1.8 seconds for titles. A dull square gets skipped, a crisp one gets the click. Your art shows your promise. Key art does 3 jobs at once: broadcasts your genre, signals production quality, and sets the tone. If a passerby can't tell PvP roguelike in space at a glance, they're never really going to know how good the game really is. Your trailer is your proof. Once players land on the page, a 30 to 45 second trailer becomes their silent demo. Platforms autoplay muted, so rely on really tight pacing, readable captions, and big text beats. A good trailer routinely doubles conversion versus a static page. And a cohesive store shows your trust. Thumbnails, screenshots, and videos should feel consistent. Logo treatment, palette, and these types should feel like they were thought out. Sporadic pages and uncoordinated assets will show lack of consistency and in turn lose installs. With this in mind, as an indie, you have a bit of a superpower to help make this happen. Big publishers need weeks of sign-off. Meanwhile, you can iterate art, thumbnails overnight. Use the speed to your advantage. A/B test a color shift or even a new text hook. Keep the winner, archive the loser. You can also learn a lot from observing how larger titles release assets and how their communities respond, so always research titles like yours. Bottom line is polished assets don't just look nice. They raise click-through rate, boost wish lists, and feed the recommendation loop that brings real players to your game.
Let's talk about that indie advantage. I mean, speaking with dozens of devs and creators over the years, we've found that small teams can be even more effective than larger studios. You being small is secretly your superpower. So, what are those superpowers? For one, you'll be able to be authentic. Players crave a genuine developer voice, and they love hearing a real creator's voice far more than a polished marketing narrator. And it's that genuine voice that comes across as more relatable, more human. The high points and the struggles during development, the ones you're probably experiencing right now, documenting that bootstrap process itself is relatable content. People root for the underdogs, so don't be afraid to document that scrappy process. Also, your superpower is your agility. With no approval layers, you can capture, edit, and publish in a single afternoon. And that same speed that lets you test new key art and tease a new feature overnight and act on real data, you have a direct feedback loop that is lightning fast. And once that loop is humming, you can invite fans to supply clips and ideas, turning your audience into an extension of the team, really co-creating with the community. Now that we kind of know why polished assets matter, let's kind of nail down when to create them. So think of launch day as the finish line and work in reverse. Asset lock deadlines, capture sessions, and storyboard shot list prep, all shot and slot into a countdown. And we want to have that top of mind, a launch timeline that includes launch assets running in parallel with your development process and milestones. This way you know when you should start thinking about key art or a capture session before launch.
All right. So first, get a lay of the land on what your store is and what your submitting requires. For the Meta Horizon store, you'll need game trailer, hero cover, cover landscape, cover square, cover portrait, mini landscape, logo, mobile icon, and finally some screenshots of your gameplay. There are a couple additional assets as the platform changes, like immersive layers and 360 previews, that you'll want to consider as well, but please refer to the online documentation for the latest considerations for those more specific assets. Now, at first, this may sound like a whole lot, but you'll notice that there's actually a lot of redundancies in these assets. Each of these images is ultimately a different layout of a similar asset for your main thumbnail. So make sure to set up your project in a way that allows you to reposition things and get the different ratios you need produced. For things like characters, backgrounds, logos, and the details in between, get them separated into different layers. This will make your life much easier in the future as you'll make all the many sizes necessary for the different platforms you'll be launching on. Just make sure to figure out all the assets you need for launch before getting into the weeds on anything too specific. Now that you've done the work to identify the kinds of assets you need to produce, you can start putting together a timeline on what you will need to work on. Generally, a lot of publishers will ask for assets somewhere around a month before launch, so this is your first official date to have your assets complete. Now, assuming you have a smaller team in place, such as a developer, editor, creative lead, and maybe a couple testers, we've got some assumptions to get you started. If you're a solo dev, though, you're really going to need to do some research to understand what areas you'll need support in and how much you can put on your plate each week. For bigger videos, roughly 60 seconds, with no big bells and whistles, expect to spend a few weeks from planning to export. But this will start after your game is in a playable state and your art assets are ready to record. And for something more produced, like a live action gameplay, VFX, custom score, etc., these can take easily 3 months with proper planning and a decent sized team. For key art, again, this can generally be done in about a couple weeks for a single asset. Smaller videos like social clips can range pretty widely depending on the goal. A dev update to Discord may only take a couple days, but a planned 15-second ad spot, you probably want to spend at least 2 weeks planning, capturing, and editing. Now, these timelines will change wildly depending on the project, scale, and milestones, but the goal is for those of you who are brand new to the process to be able to think realistically about how much you'll need to plan out. Later on, we'll go over the specifics of working on some of these assets, and our hope is that by the end of this webinar, you'll have an understanding of how making these assets could be structured so that you can properly plan your own marketing timeline.
So, how do you build a launch asset package without living in capture hell? We've seen it so many times. A creator wants to capture a single IG video or a teaser or just record a play session with friends. No plan, and the time spent getting everyone in world or game, making sure everyone is recording and not knowing whether you got the shot, it's just not really efficient. And this is why we recommend scheduling a targeted capture session or sessions. But these are half-day film shoots. And when I say film shoot, I mean you should treat capture like a film shoot, like block out a single master session the way Hollywood schedules a shoot day. In half a day, you'll record POV gameplay, run some clean spectator paths, and snap a dozen stills. The advantage to this is how much more efficient you'll find yourself. You record once, repurpose forever, key art, trailer, vertical shots, vertical teasers, all from the same footage. It also forces you to plan your shots. This discipline, paired with a shot list, keeps you laser focused on the exact moments that sell the game. It's just not random filler. There's also beauty in visual consistency. Same lighting, same avatars, and same recording settings. This will give every asset a unified professional look. And with this master footage library, you have the agility to swap thumbnails or change a shot overnight based on feedback. So now let's shift from planning to pixels. Your key art, the single image that decides whether a player scrolls past or taps go. Here's why your key art isn't just decoration. It's really a growth lever. First, storefront impact. When players scroll the Horizon store, they decide in a split second which app or world to tap. An engaging, readable image can double or even triple your click-through rate, and more clicks turn into more wish lists, turn into more visibility, and that just kind of snowballs. The other thing to think about is that one strong key art does far more than live in the store. You'll crop it for thumbnails, drop it into your press kit, use it as your YouTube cover, and repurpose slices of it for social. I mean, for us, we use key art for end cards on videos with some slight animation all the time, working with devs. So basically, nail this one image and lock in your brand consistency without reinventing the wheel each time. And before we even open Photoshop, we need a strategic foundation. Otherwise, we're just kind of painting pretty pictures here. You're going to want to jot down 3 things: the core promise of your game, the emotion you want players to feel, and the exact audience you're chasing. Those notes become the North Star for every color choice and character pose. Then you'll want to scan the battlefield. Spend 10 minutes in the Horizon store, screenshot the top 10 titles in your genre, and ask, where do they all look the same? And this is where you want to be different. When it comes to inspiration, think outside the box. Instead of just looking at game art, look at movie posters, album covers, even comic books that speak to the vibe you want. Drop them into a mood board. Notice recurring shapes, fonts, or color palettes that resonate with your message. And also be sure to set a goal for each concept. So, for example, Direction A highlights a godlike creature power for city building fans, and Direction B spotlights chaotic co-op mayhem for party gamers. A clear goal lets you test variants later instead of debating taste now. So you're no longer guessing. You're designing key art that's laser aligned with your brand, differentiated in store, and ready to hook the exact players that you want. When it comes to some key art best practices, we have 6 here. The first one being think small, like design for a postage stamp thumbnail, maybe about 150 pixels, because that's how players meet your game in the store grid. Second, we'll want a clear focal element. So beyond the logo, pick a single hero, your main character, a giant mech, and make everything else support that star. The eye really loves to see hierarchy in this key art. Then we're going to leverage contrast and depth. So a bright subject on a dark background, rim light around the silhouette, or a depth of field blur that instantly separates the hero from the clutter. Fourth would be brand consistency. So use the same color palette, font family, and shading style you'll show in game. When players click through, the world they enter should feel like the art they tapped. Fifth is be safe zones, right? So overlay the Quest Horizon crop guides while you work and keep every critical element, logo text, character faces inside that inner frame. And finally, with color, warm reds and oranges shout urgency, cool blues feel strategic or serene. Pick hues that telegraph emotion and mood that you're trying to go for. And run every draft through these 6 filters and ask yourself, does it still hit? If yes, you nailed it. And here's some kind of rapid fire tricks, to sanity check your key art before you hit upload. The first being kind of a grayscale test. Drop your artwork into Photoshop, turn the saturation to 0, and squint. And like when the color is gone, the light and dark is all that's left. If your hero element still pops and your logo is legible, your composition is solid. If everything kind of turns into one gray mush, add contrast or simplify the background. Second would be, this is one of our favorites, is mock-up in a store grid, right? So you're going to paste your thumbnail into a Quest Store template next to half a dozen real titles in your genre. If your eye doesn't snap to the tile, to your key art within a second, keep iterating because players aren't going to hunt for it. And don't forget to check the art inside the headset as well as mobile, because compression and auto scaling can blur small text or crush shadows. You want to catch those problems now, not on launch day or a big update marketing push that you want to do. And these are some quick tests that can really make a difference long term.
All right. Now that we've got the store page covered in key art, let's talk capture. To really treat capture like a pro, you're going to want to start with a solid plan as mentioned. It all really starts with the concept. Sit down with your team and come up with a few short ideas for trailers, social videos. Don't worry about the details yet, just focus on the core ideas and pick your favorites. For example, on Gorilla Tag, the concept we chose was moves like monkey. This fit just the vibe we were looking for, so we built it out from there. Once you've picked your direction, create planning materials like a shot list and a storyboard. A shot list outlines the specific actions and levels you want to capture. A storyboard shows how the shots will be arranged using sketches or in-game screenshots. Doing this will start to reveal to you just how much effort these assets will take to produce. These will also help you identify issues like, are the levels ready to record? How many players need to be in each shot? Which shot's the most complicated should come first? Which shots should be done with a much more targeted team? And any other specifics you'll need to consider with your dev timeline. This should be the fun stage where you start really imagining what your assets will look like. Now for my favorite part. Now that you have an idea of what you want to capture, let's start breaking stuff. Your goal with capture is to get the best shot of your game. You don't need to play it from start to finish to do this. You're trying to try making a capture build with debug options such as level skipping, unlimited funds, item spawning, whatever your players need to get better capture faster. For the images shown here, in Last Exit, the game works off a series of rooms. We built a teleporter system out so that during the shoot, all of our players could immediately go into the location we wanted to capture, instead of gambling on what rooms we might get if we played normally. And then in Trail Riders, the car flip was actually added in by recording our avatars just in a static car, and then on a green background that we captured a couple different plates with and comped them together. Finally, your camera is the most important part of capturing. If you need to remove some scenery or extend a wall to get the coolest shot, do it. You have full control of your apps. If you want to see something very specific happen, figure out what it'll take to make it a simple process. All right, so now that we've talked about planning, prepping, here are some actual tools that you can start getting familiar with. In general, when recording with the headset, make sure to take full advantage of MetaLink or MQDH to use their higher quality casting tools. You can also always have the ability to record directly in headset using the quick menu. On mobile, most iOS and Android devices also have native recording abilities in the utilities panel with some settings you can adjust. In Worlds, there's also a camera on your wrist menu that you can use to get some more social style selfies, handheld, and third-person shots. These will save to your gallery in your Meta app. We have OBS, or Open Broadcaster Software, which is a really powerful tool that you can use to screen capture almost anything else on PC and Mac, and you can even record external devices in high quality if you have a capture card you can plug into the system. Just make sure whatever process you use, set your capture settings to the specs you'll need for the asset you'll be making. Last note here is legal. Make sure that you have the rights to use any content you are capturing. Players' names, faces, voices, locations, music. All of these are just some examples of assets that will typically need a license to utilize. Make sure if you've downloaded files to check their source and make absolutely sure you can use it. Using content without rights is a whole mess of trouble you really don't want to deal with. Just do things right. And now for some engine considerations. In Unity and Unreal, really anything is possible here. For VR, POV, do what you can to center the camera to your player's perspective and increase the FOV a bit so you can see the action in your game. A lot of games by default will be pretty cramped in, so do some tests to see what looks best for your app. For 2D games, make sure to clear out any unnecessary UI and hide the player names, really just focus on the action. Your goal here is to really show off your gameplay. Ultimately, things like UI menus will just tend to get in the way of what you're actually wanting to show, unless obviously that's what your app is about. You also want to make sure to check your asset stores for tools that people have already published. If you can save a couple days not making a tool, do it. And now onto some worlds considerations. You want to consider pretty much everything I already just talked about, but first off, you want to make a separate world you can really just mess up to get the best capture without harming your actual launch world. Check your player settings panel and dial in any quality settings, but avoid making your game run poorly, because if you capture that, it'll look bad. Try adding scripts to hide name tags or remove UI from the player's POV so you can get the cleanest shot. And then beyond breaking things, see what you can actually create or program to make cool shots. Maybe you want a short orthographic camera or a drone camera. You can make a special mobile toggle that would allow a user to become a camera and allow variation in shots. Now that you know what you're shooting and the tools you have, you need to decide how you shoot it. First, make sure you have someone stationed on each platform you're supporting. If your app is cross-platform with PC, Quest, and mobile, plan to have someone recording from each type of device for your shoot. That not only allows you to have an edit with all three platforms, but also have 3 different trailers if you need to focus on one. Make sure every person capturing has the correct settings dialed in so all of your footage is consistent. Some examples to get your thoughts going would be, does everyone have the correct build of the app for recording? Are everyone's resolution settings consistent at 1080 or above? What is the target frame rate of the footage? Is everyone able to capture that? Does everyone have music and VO sound turned off as much as possible? Your editor will thank you that. Are the settings of your recorded software consistent? Does everyone know what character or avatar they're going to be for the shoot? And does everyone know how to use the tools made for capture? Just ask these questions as a minimum will seriously eliminate a lot of the complications with capture if you can just take a moment before shooting to try and cover them. And remember that master capture session? Well, here's how it worked for Last Exit. We scheduled one master capture session with the largest amount of players we knew we needed. We made sure everyone understood the project, their roles ahead of capture. The shot list was shared with them. All of our debug tools are ready. In this case, it was mostly that teleporter, and everyone knew which accounts and avatars they were using. We kicked off the first half of the shoot with our most complicated big group shots and grabbed any stills that we felt like we could get for good screenshots. And about halfway through the session, we started focusing in on the shots that really only required either a couple of players or no players at all. Everyone else was just on standby just in case, but the remainder of the shoot focused on getting more cinematic shots and shots that would be kind of the connective tissue for the trailer. Since we were able to get everything planned out ahead of time, capture was a breeze.
Now we want to talk about on maximizing your assets. So you've got all this raw footage in a vault. And so let's turn your clips into some marketing assets. We want to make sure you're working smarter, not harder. So making sure every second of footage can pull triple duty for you. We use kind of what like I call a triangle test. Before you hit record, ask yourself, can this moment feed at least 3 different other assets? For example, a shot of your hero landing a perfect combo. That single clip can headline your trailer, become a 15-second vertical teaser, and freeze frame into a store screenshot. If you can't name 3 uses, flag that shot as single purpose and capture sparingly. These single use clips really can clog up drives and honestly rarely move the needle. So let's plan once, shoot once, and let every frame work harder than you do. And now we want our assets to pull triple duty for us, so we need to make sure we're organized. This is where the master folder rule comes in, creating one root directory for the entire launch or the entire capture session, right? You're going to call it launch assets master, and everything goes inside it. Raw video, high-res stills, PNGs, music, Photoshop files, video editing projects, no wandering files on desktops or random cloud links. This will save you hours later. And inside that single folder, use numbered subfolders so the workflow flows top to bottom. The 2 big payoffs we've seen. One is 0 duplicate work. You need a vertical teaser, just grab the master clip from O1 capture, no hunting, no re-exporting. It's also helpful for instant handoffs. If you go on vacation, which maybe a lot of you don't, a teammate can open up the folder and know exactly where every asset lives and which file is the approved version. One folder, consistent naming, no drama, follow it, and you'll spend your launch week polishing assets, not searching for them. And now that everything is organized, the next step is consistency. So you don't need fresh shoots every week. You just need a steady cadence to how you will use the footage you already captured. To do that, you can build a simple 3-post rhythm and stock it with reusable formats. We'll be providing a worksheet after this webinar with some format ideas for you guys all. But for this example, on a Monday, you can have a dev tip. Right? Maybe it's a split screen, you on the left, gameplay on the right, spending 30 seconds explaining why maybe the boss telegraphs its attacks. It's authentic, uses footage you already have, and positions you as the expert guiding players inside the world. Then on Wednesday, we'll throw in memes or maybe some lighthearted content, and maybe it's a fail blooper compilation, right? Maybe throw in a quick quote card that overlays a funny player review on a blurred background. Either way, this is going to keep the feed playful and shareable. Then we'll finish the week with a Feature Friday. Super open-ended, but gives you the liberty to spotlight any sort of eye-catching moment, mechanic, stat, or a new update. And if you need some anytime filler, a slow environmental shot with subtle sound effects works as a chill post between big beats. Kind of like a perfect for Sunday evenings. But stick to that Monday, Wednesday, Friday cadence and recycle these formats. Your community learns what to expect. Algorithms reward regularity, and you never stare at an empty content calendar again.
All right, content creation doesn't just stop at launch. Let's chat quickly about how you can keep track of the impact they're making with testing. Testing may very well be one of the most important tools you can utilize. The goal is to increase conversion. Conversion is the amount of users who will see, click, and purchase your title. By A/B testing specific assets, you can learn what people gravitate towards, thus increasing conversions for your title. In the development dashboard, you can test several PDP variables. These include video trailer, description, cover art, screenshots, and 360 previews. You're probably thinking, sure, I need to test, but those changes could be anything. Don't worry too much. We've got some thoughts, and Meta has several produced resources that you can reference to help get you started. First, come up with a hypothesis that you'll be able to track and understand. Don't change everything so you have no idea what's working. Keep it trackable. Maybe one trailer focuses on gameplay and the other on characters. If the gameplay does best, try to incorporate more gameplay into your content. Second, make sure your assets are differentiated. If your assets are so similar that you can't really understand what's driving, you'll never be able to make firm conclusions. Don't just swap the weapon your hero is holding in your key art, change the angle of the image, the character shown, something big. Third, make sure to time your tests properly. Test your assets when you know, to the best of your ability, no other exterior factors will alter your results. Say there's a big sale coming up, and your title will be half price. Avoid A/B testing right on that date, so you know that your art's not being affected by the actual sale going on. And then fourth and finally, iterate. Once you've got a couple of tests on your belt, it's time to review your initial hypothesis and see what you can change to keep your test fresh and converting new users. Audience preferences and trends in the market constantly change, so you want to keep revisiting how you're approaching these tests after every cycle. Now, let's talk about some tests that we're doing that you can reference here. Kaiju Battle Simulator is a game focused on brawling with giant monsters in a cityscape using a badass mech and all its weaponry. The two assets we put together for the test are A dramatic close-up with a mech front and center and the kaiju subtly showing its reflection in the helmet, and B, a more dynamic shot set against a city skyline that highlights one of our favorite kaijus, Moby. We're theorizing that key art A may perform a little better because the close-up of the mech is very eye-catching and will appeal to fans of the bigger IPs like Pacific Rim. Next, we have Plastic Battlegrounds. This is a game where you fight on the battlefield with plastic toy soldiers, like so many of us probably did as kids. Just this time, the action, the explosions are all right in front of you too. The two sets we put together for this test were A, minimal graphic approach with large simplified shapes and limited color palette, and B, showing a squad of toy soldiers getting battle ready, but contrasting with the elements of the child's room, such as Lego bricks and a colorful carpet. Although it has a busier composition, we're theorizing that key art B may perform a little better, the more playful tone may resonate better with the target audience. We are starting the key art test for these two games now, and we'll continue iterating afterwards to identify what works best.
So remember, the first key art export is a draft. Like, it doesn't need to be final. You want to treat the store grid like a living A/B test and cycle through small, measurable tweaks. So some examples you can experiment with: a hero versus villain focus. Try showing the villain instead of a hero and see which image gets more clicks. Similarly, you can try characters versus no characters. Run a version with your hero front and center, then try a minimalist, environment-only scene. When it comes to color strategies, test a warm palette against a cooler one. You can also change up camera angles and placement. Low angles shots feel epic, and top-down can highlight strategy. Even a small tilt can change the story your art tells. And for logo tweaks, like big center badge versus smaller corner stamp, you want to find that sweet spot between brand and clutter. And much like key art, there are also variations to trailers you can experiment with. Keep in mind, this doesn't have to be an entire re-edit. You can cut two versions that are identical, except for a single change. For example, starting with the storyline versus gameplay focus. One version opens on a 5-second narrative beat, maybe a text card that sets the world, before getting into the action. The other version skips that and drops straight into raw gameplay. You can then let each run for a period of time and watch which intro keeps viewers longer. Now, building on top of that, you can take the winning video and then test on-screen text versus voiceover and see how that does. Basically, we are trying to make small focus changes, just like we did A/B testing key art, but now it's for video. Other changes we can experiment with would be swapping the soundtrack. Try a slow build, atmospheric track, then a fast, high BPM cut. Nothing else moves. You're testing whether energy levels bump completion rate. Finally, you can try and pivot the perspective, show a lone player versus surrounded by teammates, right? It's still the exact same sequence, but that tells you if your audience responds better to a single player fantasy or maybe a co-op vibe. And that's that. Like, change one thing, run it for a couple days, log the watch time numbers, crown the winner, and move on. Small lifts really can compound fast. So, quick rewind before we take a short break and reconvene for office hours Q&A. Feel free to start dropping in your questions into chat, and we'll try and get to as many as possible. But be sure to stick around because that is following this webinar. And to recap, we talked about planning backwards, circle launch day, count back. In this case, deadlines are going to help you drive clarity. Shooting smart, one master capture session can fill your entire content master folder. Crafting click-worthy key art, planning your game capture, making each clip work harder for you, right? Like run that triangle test. If a shot can't feed at least 3 assets, trailer, vertical teaser, screenshot, reshoot it or skip it. And keep that feed flowing, whether or not a dev tip, a blooper reel, an ambient loop. You'll want to schedule them on a simple cadence so fans know when to tune in. And iterating after launch, right? Swap thumbnails, tweak color palettes, test music and voiceover. It's really data, not opinion, that's going to help you steer the refresh cycles. So, yep, capture once, export forever, and keep moving with real numbers.
Sweet. And last thing, keep your eyes open for some materials we'll be putting together as a follow-up. Some templates for safe zones and shot lists, a triangle test worksheet, and a creator tip worksheet.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you all for office hours Q&A in a little bit. We can't wait to chat more. Our hope is to be as helpful as we can so you have what you all need to really crush it